Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Hello and welcome to podcast number 2 of Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. And I want to thank everybody for the wonderful support that they extended for our first podcast. And we hope that you will continue to spread the word. It's been a crazy week, hasn't it? I had an opportunity to go to Boise, Idaho for a band festival. Wonderful event. I figured it was going to be canceled. It wasn't. And it probably was the last band festival that was going to happen in the country for a while. The world has changed in the past week. I'm sure most of you are not in school. There are still some teachers that are still working in school. And now we get to work from home, something that we said, oh man, if I could ever have the opportunity to work from home, life would be great. Well, we're going to find out how great that's going to be. But it's a challenge, and it's something that we're all going to have to deal with. I think it's really important that as you begin this challenge to start delivering education from your home to kids in their homes, that you think broadly. Got to remember that not every kid is going to have the same kind of access to technology as every other kid has. There's a lot of kids that come from poor families. They may not have as much as others. And we want to make sure that we don't exclude those in the process. So, we have a lot of printed materials, method books, technique books, things like that. Hopefully, there are access to those. And I think the most important thing is you have to communicate. You have to communicate with those kids. You have to communicate with those families. That may be done via the internet. It may have to be done by phone calls. I mean, you may have to resort to the United States Post Office and put a letter out and get to them. But it's important to communicate and to keep them involved and let them know that you still care. As a teacher, you may be locked out of your situation and have limited access to resources. And now is going to be more important than ever that you have that incredible circle of friends and circle of people that you've made along the way. Stephen Covey always talked about having that circle of influence and bringing more people in. And so those of you that have developed that circle of influence, you got teachers from other parts of the country, teachers in your district that you have a good relationship with. You may need to rely on each other and help share those resources to kind of help you through this. There was a book a long time ago by a guy by the name of Harvey Mackay. Harvey Mackay was an envelope magnet from the Minneapolis area. And I remember a line in the book that he talked about, he with the biggest Rolodex wins. Well, we don't have Rolodexes anymore, but the point is that if you've got that great circle of people and that circle of friends out there and circle of people that you can call on for resources and support, it's going to help you a lot. So don't be afraid to reach out to your friends and ask for help, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now, is I'm asking for your help. I want to hear from you. If you're a teacher, you're a student, you're a parent, you're an administrator, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your ideas of tips that I can share via this podcast. You can send them to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. And if you do that, then we'll address those in upcoming podcasts, because we're going to keep this thing really current and really flowing with as much information as we can. I'll do my best to get questions answered. If I can't answer them, I'll reach out to my circle of friends who I'll use on this podcast to do that. The last thing I'm going to encourage you to do is to keep your level of energy up. Keep your energy up with your students. Be positive in your communication. It's not doom and gloom. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make relationships with kids that we may never reach in the classroom. We now have an opportunity to teach one-on-one. We're going to get to every kid in every class. And oftentimes when we're in school in regular session, we don't have that opportunity. We don't have that opportunity to reach out and to find out what's going on in the minds of every student. The number of kids that get through a class that we never call on. We don't know what they're thinking. They show up, they're playing a second or third part, they're sitting in the middle of a section. They don't misbehave. They don't ask questions. They just, band is the best thing that's going on in their life right now. And they just enjoy the opportunity to be there, to be a part of a group. You know what? Now we get an opportunity to reach out to them and to find out what's really going on in their head. So keep your energy up. And it may be challenging for you. You may have a family at home. You may have little ones running around the house. You're going to be juggling 2 or 3 things at a time. So I wish you well. If Band Talk Charlie can help you, we want to do that, okay? So again, I want to hear from you, your questions, your comments. Send it to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. On today's podcast, we're going to have an interview with Alex Shapiro, a wonderful female composer from the Seattle area. We recorded this interview just before the coronavirus hit. She was planning on going to the CBDNA convention, which was scheduled for this week, the week of March 16. But that has gone through. We're also going to have an open conversation here with Mike Rankin. Mike's a band instrument repair guy from Olathe, Kansas. And then we're going to end up, I had a nice conversation with Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser this morning about what's going on in the world and our views about it. We had a wonderful conversation that we'll share with you with the end of this podcast. So we're off and running with Podcast 2 with Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends, and we'll be right back. Thank you so much.
Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, Eastman Musical Instruments, and Vandercook College of Music.
So let's join our conversation with Alex Shapiro.
I'm so happy that you can join me and that you consented to do this. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. And when you first said that you were going to be doing, a podcast series, I thought, what a perfect person for this. I mean, you and your ebullience and your effervescence and your enthusiasm, all the good E words.
Well, you need to send me a bill for that, okay?
That's right.
So are you, I trust you're in the Pacific Northwest right now?
I am. I just got back from ASCAP board meetings last week in Los Angeles, and I'm here, hopefully, only for the next 2 weeks, depending on what's going on with all the coronavirus stuff. Because, as you know, in Washington, there have been more than a handful of cases, and in 2 weeks is the really wonderful CBDNA Northwestern Regional Conference in Tacoma.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so I'm really hoping that they don't have to cancel that. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. But I'm so excited to be going down to that conference because I've got 3 things going on down there. I've got a premiere and a performance of a different piece and a presentation I'm doing. So you've got
what's your presentation?
The 3 Ps. It's on electroacoustic multimedia music for large ensembles and activism, and the way we can use our work to convey messages that are important to us. They don't have to be political, just messages, whether the environment or, other issues that we want to share from the heart with musicians and audiences. And I'm finding that a lot of my pieces really lend themselves to that. And a lot of other people are doing the same thing, a lot of other composers. And it's really powerful and wonderful. So I'm going to take everybody kind of through an exploration of that using some of my pieces as an example.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, for those people that are listening, I want them to kind of know who you are if they don't. I remember a long time ago. I don't know how many years now it's been, but I was speaking with Bruce Bush of Hal Leonard, and he asked me if I heard of this fabulous new composer, Alex Shapiro. And he told me about your work, Paper Cut. And I told Bruce, I said, well, I've never heard of him. And he said, no, Alex is not a him, it's a her. And I said, really? And I listened to Paper Cut, and I just loved it. And we played it at Midwest, and then we followed up the next year with Tight Squeeze. And I'll tell you, that recommendation from Bruce was one of the greatest gifts he ever gave me, was the opportunity to get to meet you and know you and experience your music. So we got to thank Bruce for this.
We certainly do, and I have huge thanks to him for making the introduction to you too, because oh my gosh, you really, really changed my life, Charlie. I mean, you had a huge impact, and I think that this is a great example of the positive impact that conductors, band directors, ensemble leaders can have on the lives of composers and musicians, obviously, around them, but especially composers. When you take us and give us a chance, when we are unknown quantities, at least in that genre, because I certainly was an unknown quantity in the band world at that time. This was about 2011, something like that. It was something early like on, but yeah, almost 10 years ago. And for you to react so positively and then want to do it at Midwest on, in a pretty big venue like that, that was really life-changing. And then on top of it, when this piece, Paper Cut, is the only piece that I don't publish. My company is Activist Music, and the reason is because BandQuest, the fabulous series that's out of the American Composers Forum, they're the ones that publish it, and they're the ones also that took a big risk on me and gave me this chance 10 years ago. And the fact that when they send out the accompaniment track to everybody who purchases it, who has to, get the track from them, that they include a quote that you so generously gave them at the bottom of the email. That is so wonderful and so meaningful to me when you're raving about the piece.
What was it? I don't remember.
Oh gosh, I'll have to pull it up here while we're talking and read it to you. It's a great quote. I have it right here. Give me 1 second. You can edit this portion out. Hold on.
No,
because it's yeah, hold on. I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to read you your own quote. It's a wonderful quote. Yeah, here it is. It says, quote, "Paper Cut is a must for any director wanting to expand the musical horizons of their ensembles. A crowd-pleasing work. Every young band needs to add this to their repertoire as soon as possible. Your crowds will love it, and so will your students. Enjoy, and bravo to Alex Shapiro for this great addition to the
That's great.
Menghini Vandercook College." Isn't that amazing? That is still, I mean, you can tell her to take it off.
No, I still
that's been going out to thousands of people.
I still believe it. I still believe it.
Oh man, that was life-changing for me. And, there are so many, moving parts to anybody's career. And you are a huge moving part. Bruce Bush is a huge moving part, because he too, early on, after Paper Cut, took a big chance on me and said, "Come into the Hal Leonard family. Let us distribute Activist Music." And as you know, in every at Midwest, my goodness, they've got a huge rack of my stuff now. Every year we joke about Alex's ever-growing rack, and because I'm always adding. And
now keep it clean. We may have children listening to this here, so.
Only the composer can tell that one.
What's your musical history?
It's really fun. But he took a real chance on me.
Oh, he did. Well, it was a pretty easy bet. It's like betting on the Patriots 5 years ago to win the Super Bowl or something like that. So, Alex, tell me about your musical history, like where you grew up and what you started doing and all that sort of thing.
Well, I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan. I like to joke is an island half the size of the one on which I live now. I live on San Juan Island off the coast of Washington State, and we have about 55 square miles, which is literally twice the size of Manhattan, and about 6,500 people full time. So a little bit different there. But I grew up in Manhattan. I'm an only child of two parents who really, really loved the art. And I was very fortunate because of that, because early on, I grew up with nothing but classical music blasting through the house, all, on my dad's old KLH speakers. He was really, he loved music, and so did my mother. And so I grew up with, being, lulled to sleep by the strains of Mahler and Bartok and Beethoven and Brahms. It was fantastic. So early on, once I had my own mobility, by the time I was about 13 and earning babysitting money and all that, I had the run of the city and went to everything you can imagine in all genres, whatever it was. I mean, I just, when I was growing up, they took me to concerts. And then once I was old enough to go myself, because this was the 70s, it was different than now. I think parents don't let 13-year-olds run around so much these days, but when I was growing up, hey, go have fun. Maybe you won't come home. Who cares? I don't know. But I went, and I grew up with Village Vanguard, with Carnegie Hall, with the Met Opera, Bailey and the Joffrey. I grew up with CBGBs and and just amazing experiences in all areas of music and dance and theater, all the Broadway shows that I would save up my money and, get the standing room only tickets for. Same thing as opera. I remember the Met Opera at the time was like 15 or something. A standing room, $3. I could afford that because I think I was making $1.25 an hour as a babysitter in a building. I grew up on the 16th floor of a building, and so I would buy myself a standing room ticket. And I would always dress nicely because I'd get there, and certainly, especially if it was like Olathe or Lulu or something, somebody would be running, screaming from up the aisles, never to make it back for the next act, and I snagged their orchestra seat. So I was a pro at snagging orchestra seats, and that was my upbringing. The arts were affordable then. You could wait online at tickets. I mean, you still can, but the numbers are much more now. It's a lot more expensive to get theater tickets and all of that. So my upbringing was saturated in being able to attend everything and museums as well. And then also being in New York City, having the benefit of education, because I went to Juilliard pre-college, from which I graduated. I was a composition major there, if one is a major in pre-college. And then from there, I went to Manhattan School of Music. So, the New York City just is this incredible petri dish of creativity and exposure.
Yeah, well, and that explains a lot, because of all the various genres that you were exposed to, and you've kind of taken all of them and kind of created your own voice,
Yeah. It had a huge impact.
So I kind of understand like how you began to find your voice in it. So for somebody that doesn't know your music, how would you describe it?
How would I describe it? Let's see. Well, I would say that it's sort of textural pitches that, if they're not locked into a groove, they sort of defy gravity. I think that's what I would say, because, and my music pretty well. I've got the groove pieces like Paper Cut or Tuck Squeeze or Lights Out. Those are the ones where you're locked in and away you go. And a new one for a young band called Off the Edge, which is just rolling out its premieres now. It had about 35 commissioners. I can talk about that project in a bit. But so I've got the groove-based pieces, which are just pure fun, and they edge on pop music or music in some way. And then the other pieces are tone poems, or completely weird, esoteric, like rock music, which is very minimalist. But the ones that are tone poemy and float around, like Immersion or Liquid Compass, those pieces, I think the way I achieve my artistic nirvana is a lot of mixed meters, to keep the audience and the listeners not quite knowing where one is, where the downbeats are going to fall. Because to me, life does not have regular, predictable downbeats. Our speaking patterns don't. And nature outside my window, I'm on the Salish Sea, I'm looking at water as we speak. There is no regularity. There is no 4/4 in nature. And I think that really affects the way I hear. So it affects my music. So I kind of go from one extreme to the other, sometimes within the same piece. The third movement of Immersion, Beneath, is a bit like that, where it begins very floaty and ends very floaty, and in the middle is a groove section with improv and everything. But I treat it a bit like a band chart, big band chart.
Yeah, I think that's where art comes from. You know, when I was teaching at Vandercook and I would do a class in repertoire, things like that, and we would listen to some new music, I would put on like the first 4 measures or 8 measures of the piece and stop the recording. And then I would ask the teachers, I said, now sing to me what you think is coming next. And you know, in so many pieces, you can sing exactly the next 8 bars back without ever hearing it. And I said,
right.
Okay, that should tell you it's not worth playing with your kids because you've already heard that. They've already heard that, right?
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Well, you know, when you think of the success of pop music, which is, you know, pop music is great. I love pop music. It is the predictability that makes it so popular. So I think that is one of the big differences in, I don't know a better term to use other than art music, which I don't mean in a disparaging way or a least way, but art music versus pop music, or concert music versus pop music. You're right. Concert music is often, I think if you're doing it right, it's about not necessarily leading the audience, you know, by the nose to the next predictable thing. Absolutely.
Right. But, you know, I mean, pop music, I mean, it's kind of fun. I like pop music. You like pop music.
Yeah.
And I think that's different than band piece number 3,642. You know, it's not popular. It's just predictable.
It's predictable, and frankly, I'll use another P word. It's plodding. A lot of it is plodding. And you know, I got to tell you, you know, when I came in out of left field into the band world when I was in my late 40s. I had no band experience at all. People who've listened to other podcasts on which I've spoken have heard the story about, you know, I have Homecoming and the U.S. Army and Todd Addison, you know, wrangling me in to do a piece, and I was terrified, and I jumped in and did it, and of course loved it. It's like I don't want to get out of that genre now. I adore it. But one of the things early on when I was trying to familiarize myself with more band music, I was sort of struck, even among, you know, some composers who were not yet dead, that there was such, and I didn't feel that, even though in many cases that you're writing for younger people, doesn't mean that you should compromise, you know, your artistic bent or intention. And to me, there's no correlation there. And so I think there is clearly a huge market for all kinds of band music, but where I found my own voice and my own niche was probably in saying, okay, I'm coming at this from left field. I have not been drenched in the repertoire. I don't know how to do those gorgeous voicings and, you know, the way bandistration and orchestration in band has spectacular sounds that often come from certain orchestrational formulas that work really, really well. But we've heard them many, many times. And so because I didn't have that background, I think when Todd, for instance, you know, commissioned Homecoming, he pretty much said, I know you're going to do something different. I know you don't have the background, and go for it. You know, just, I know you're going to hear differently because this is not your world. And we want that. We need that. And again, what a great thing, you know, like you taking a chance on me and Bruce, and for Todd to say, wow, you know, go do something different. I have no idea what you're going to do. And even if you fall on your backside, it's okay. You know, every artist needs to hear that. And it's huge. And I think that's why I've been able to do well in that world, is because people trust you. You know, they give you the long rope with which to hang yourself.
Well, you know, I've seen you work firsthand, obviously, with our band at Vandercook, and you know, you're just magical. I mean, you just light up when you come into a room, and the kids see you and they see your reaction, and I mean, it just invigorates them and excites them. So like when you're listening to a group perform your work, what are you thinking? And are you ever surprised?
Well, it depends.
In a good way, we hope.
In a good way. It depends on the age of the musicians. If it's a group of middle schoolers, I think my first thought, Charlie, is along the lines of, wow, I didn't realize I'd composed such a microtonal piece. It is really, it's the bastion of microtonality. That's what middle school is, which is actually, that's why I gave them rock music, because I'm asking them to pitch bend and do things that are intentionally microtonal, because that's how you actually teach them to hear what's in tune, right? Is you ask them to play out of tune. But anyway, but seriously, I'm always thinking, actually, past the, oh my goodness moments, when things are a bit microtonal, I'm always thinking how incredibly joyous the experience of sharing sound and sound waves is with people. When I'm working with people in person, I find it just an incredible, very emotional, very physical thing to hear that music coming back at me with so many people. Although I feel this way with a string trio too, but it's much more so with the band, obviously. And that's a great experience. And then I got to tell you, when I hear, whether on YouTube or people send me recordings or whatever, when I hear wonderful recordings or performances of my music from ensembles that I have never once been in contact with, other than one email to get them the accompaniment track, but I've never coached them. I didn't do a Skype rehearsal or anything with them. I've never met them. And the sonic chaos that came from my head that's represented in little black dots on the page is represented absolutely accurately and authentically and beautifully by this band in, Malaysia or wherever, or Switzerland or wherever they are. It blows my mind every time, because I think that's the magic of musical communication, and the way we have figured out somehow to notate this very private thought going on in our heads is that people who've never seen it before or heard it before can do it. It really is magical to me.
That's great. I'm gonna change topic with you if I can.
Yeah.
So over the past couple of years, and it's growing. Many ensembles, school ensembles playing at national events have been encouraged and sometimes required to play music that has been composed by women or minorities. And so, what do you think of that? Shall we say requirement? I mean, I like the encouragement part of it. Do you think that's something that should be required?
I think requiring it, as long as people are writing who are women and minorities and underrepresented composers, as long as there is plenty of excellent music from which to choose, sure. And I think it's very much like any kind of affirmative action program, which has always been meant to phase itself out with its own success. And this will be the case with let's say, in the band world. For instance, the Midwest Clinic came out, as you well know, they came out with some, which I and my peers view as real improvements to these requirements, saying at least one piece on the program should be, on your program for Midwest next year, should be from an underrepresented composer, whatever that means. We won't get into the weeds of that because it's not a perfect system. But what it means is that for many, many years, there have been so many fine composers who have not, for one reason or another, been given a voice. And a lot of it is not at all nefarious. What it is the human tendency for people, for conductors in this case, and most of them are white men, they tend to go with what they know and go with the pieces by the people that they know. And that self-perpetuates. There's nothing evil or bad about that. It's a habit. It's called being human, right? And so I think what the movement has been asking people to do at this time, when we now have a huge insurgence of women and people of color and people from all backgrounds who are writing good, and that is really an important word, good music that is equally good to the good music by everybody else that's been out there for a long time. We're saying, you know what? Open your eyes a little bit wider and take a wider, broader look at the scope of what's available now that probably wasn't available 25 years ago. And now it is, for all kinds of reasons. And, there's so many reasons I can, enumerate. One of them is actually the internet, because now with self-publishing, et cetera, and running your own business, because we all have access, equal access, that has allowed underrepresented composers to get into the mix because they don't have to deal with the gatekeepers, of publishers, record companies. I'm not saying that those are bad entities. They are. Publishers are wonderful and needed, so are record companies, but there are options, at least for people who might not have those avenues, to be able to make themselves known quantities. And we're seeing this in great numbers, and it's been really inspiring. So to come full circle to this thought, the requirements are good requirements because we're not going to need them very long at all. I said this at the CBDNA forum to all of our conductor colleagues this past December. You know, it becomes self-perpetuating. The outreach means reaching out. And when we can all identify talented, worthy, good composers of any background who are writing excellent music and bring them into the fold and bring them into this wonderful world, then they too are going to reach out to the people that they know. And it's more likely that the people that they know and hang out with are going to look more like them, the same way the white male conductors getting the white male composers, everybody was working with who looked like them. And so in a few years, you're going to see a wonderful natural balance of all kinds of composers and all kinds of good music, and we're not going to have to enforce anything. It will be self-perpetuating. It just needed this little kick in the pants. That's what I call it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. A couple of observations from what you said. I remember when I was at Vandercook, and of course everybody knows that we played at the Midwest every year, and you would have no idea that every year I would probably get 15 to 20 manuscripts in the mail from people I have never heard of, wanting me to play their piece at the Midwest Clinic. And most of the time they really didn't have a whole lot of merit. And then secondly, of course, our representative role was to perform new music that had been published. But, along those lines, I'm sure publishers get so many unsolicited compositions that they can't get through them anyhow. So they've kind of went back into their shell, and they've got their little stable of people they can trust that know it'll do a good job, and they don't find ways to reach out, And so I think you're right. I think this is a great thing that's happening. And one other little comment was, we played "Blessed Are They" by Barbara Buhlman one year at Midwest Clinic, and she told the story that when she first did the arrangement of "Blessed Are They," the publisher called her and said, "We would like to use B. Buhlman as the arranger of this, because if we put Barbara Buhlman, people probably won't buy it because it's a woman." Well, 25 years later, she said, they called me and said, "We'd like to put Barbara Buhlman on it because you're now famous and we know people will buy it."
Wow. Yeah. And that was the reality. Listen, I've got a family member who just passed away a few years ago in her late 80s, early 90s, who is a fabulous painter and a professional painter, very prolific. She was a protege of Hans Hofmann, fabulous painter. I've got about 45 of her works in my home alone, and she's been shown in the LA County Museum. Anyway, long story short, in the 1950s, when she was beginning her work, she couldn't have used her regular name, which was Florence. Instead, she used her two last names, her maiden name and her then married name. And to the day she died, those ended up being her painting names for that same reason. Women could not get arrested in the arts, especially in the visual arts, was very, very tough. And of course, composition has been very tough for a long time. And there's always been tons of great women artists and women composers. But now finally the tide is turning. And again, I really do credit technology for everybody being able to raise their voice and be seen and heard if they want to. I think that's a huge change from the past when we didn't have these self-propelling avenues. So it's been wonderful to see. I mean, I can name so many female composers and composers of color. I have, by the way, I'll make a little pitch for anybody who's interested in this topic or looking to expand their repertoire. On my own webpage, I developed a couple of years ago, I put together a programming resources page, and there's a link front and center right on my homepage of alexshapiro.org. You just scroll down a little bit and you'll see it right there. And it takes you to a gazillion links that will broaden anybody's horizons about all the wonderful composers that are writing right now. And I also have a smattering of my thoughts along the lines of what we've been talking about that I recommend anybody can use as talking points themselves if they want to, because I think it's important to bring this issue front and center, to talk about it. And the beautiful thing, Charlie, is that every time I've had a discussion with let's say a male conductor rather, who feels sheepish and badly that somehow they had never before realized that they hadn't been programming a broad, selection of composers, I say to them, don't feel badly. It's okay. It's like swimming in water, the same temperature as your body. You don't even feel the water. We've all had that wonderful feeling. I said, it's okay. But the great thing is now it's been brought to your attention and boom, you're never going to look at your curation the same way again. And they say, you're absolutely right. So all it is awareness raising. We're not beating anybody up. We're just trying to, put it on people's radar in a way that maybe they hadn't thought of before. Just like, if you tell somebody, gee, that can of tuna fish you're eating has a lot of salt in it. And they say, wow, I never realized that. I shouldn't be having so much salt. They just, you just have to raise people's awareness about all kinds of things.
Well, you have certainly raised the awareness of many of us in the profession with your artistic merit. You keep stretching the boundaries and you keep bringing us new things to listen, to open our minds. So as you continue your journey, what's your new frontiers?
I think, well, in general, I keep trying to do something a little different with each one of these already rather different pieces. For anybody listening who doesn't know my work, my focus really has been on something that sets me a bit apart from my incredibly gifted and talented peers, that very few people are doing electroacoustic band music, where I have a pre-recorded track that is played at the same volume as the band, and hopefully it's like a sporting event. You're rooting that they'll end up in a tie and one won't come out first and ahead of the other at the end of the piece. But it's basically creating this huge sonic element where I'm using the track to create sounds and frequencies that I cannot get from the musicians. Unless I were to do abusive things to them or something, but we don't want to do that. So anyway, that's what the track is for. So it's an equal and additional section of the band. And so with that as my goal in general, to create the seamless blend of sounds, I'm always looking for different and new and compelling ways to do it. I never use the same sound palette twice. That being said, I certainly have my isms. I think that people can tell kind of the types of sounds I tend to create and gravitate toward. I usually make my own sounds here in the studio. And I am just hoping to find more and more an emotionally compelling way to connect with other human beings, because we are at a time on our planet and in our world that is really upsetting. It's really upsetting. We're no matter what anybody's thoughts are on anything, it doesn't matter what side of any issue someone is on, I think everybody agrees we're in turbulent times. And with the planet, with everything. So if I can find a way to use music as a salve or as an awareness builder or anything in between, to put beauty into the world, since that's where my power might lie. I'm not going to run for office. So I figure, what can I do? Well, I can put beauty into the world and put something of meaning into the world. If I can accomplish that gives meaning to my life. So that's sort of my long-term goal. So more electroacoustic pieces. I have commissions for the next 2 or 3 years that are keeping me very compelled and interested. And I'm thinking always, what next approach can I take to something? Because sometimes, Charlie, I think people look at my catalog. I've got 14 or 15 band pieces at this point, and some of them don't sound like they've been written by the same person. To me, that's a win. It's like, yay. I'm not getting boring. When they commission me, they have no idea what they're going to get. But hopefully it has meaning to somebody.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. And yes, Alex, you will never be boring. You are a gift. You are a gift to the band world. You are a gift to me, having the chance to get to know you. And I so much appreciate you joining us today. And I encourage everybody listening to go and visit. It's alexshapiro.org, correct?
Right.
And
Charlie, you are the gift, really. You have, for so many years, meant so much to so many musicians and composers, and to your conductor peers as well. Everything that you've accomplished brings this field to where it is now. You are a huge part of what it means to be, in the wind band world, in the large ensemble world, and in the connecting hearts world. And I just want to thank you for that so much. Well, that's what we do, right? We're connecting hearts.
Yeah. We're trying.
Yeah. You had the surgery. Your heart is rip-roaring, ready to go now. You've got a heart 2.0 now.
Yeah, another 50,000 miles, I hope. Alex, thanks for checking in, and until the next time, I can't wait to see you.
Me too. You take good care, Charlie. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Alex Shapiro. She is a sweetheart, and her music really engages kids in a way that few composers in this day and age can, with all of the wonderful electroacoustic sounds and imagery she adds to every piece. We'll be right back with Mike Rankin, Mr. Fix-It, on Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. I want to give a shout out to my friends at Hal Leonard Corporation and the Eastman Musical Instrument Company and Vandercook College Music for their support and for taking a chance on this podcast. It means a great deal. To our friends at Hal Leonard and the Essential Elements Band Method, of which I am honored to be a co-author, the new Essential Elements Interactive website may be a tool that will help you through this difficult time. Check it out, essentialelementsinteractive.com.
So the real lifeblood of any good band program is that person that the audience never sees. It's that person who's there when your student drops their horn, when your student breaks their instrument, and you're in this mild panic. And who do you call? You call the fix-it guy. You call the guy who can fix the horn. And joining us right now is my buddy Mike Rankin from Olathe Band Instruments in Olathe, Kansas. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, Charlie. I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. You been fixing horns today?
No, today actually is the beginning of spring break, so I took the day off today.
Well, that's good for you, man. You deserve it, because
Yeah.
you're the hardest working guy I know when it comes to fixing horns and stuff, man. That's good. So, I got a couple questions for you, Mike, if you got a second here.
Yep, you bet.
With right now, the big deal, of course, across the world is this coronavirus that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But, that speaks to a lot bigger issue of bands and band directors and, the number of kids that share instruments in school. They're sharing tubas, baritones, French horns, saxophones, bass clarinets. I mean, you name it. And not to mention all the percussion stuff,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're a director, like, what kind of precautions do you take to at least help keep your kids from getting a cold, getting the flu, or even this darn virus that's going around?
Yeah, and, I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to pretend to be one on a podcast, but I have been reading some stuff, because actually I've had a couple of customers ask me this question. And, I've done some reading on the internet, so consider the source that we're talking about. But the CDC has talked about that basically in the terms of the coronavirus, that 12 hours is kind of the lifespan if it's on a metal object like a mouthpiece, or I would presume that would also pertain to like a plastic clarinet mouthpiece or whatever. So I would say, first of all, in a perfect world, I guess nobody, maybe you could share an instrument, but everybody would have their own mouthpiece. So that would be the first step I would take.
Well, we'd hope so. Right?
In a perfect world, if everybody has their own mouthpiece, at least the thing that's touching your face would only have your germs in it. There was a really cool study. It was done like 10 years ago by some university back east. I think it was Tufts University, and they took actually took samples of like the crud on the inside of an alto sax mouthpiece and stuff, and put it under a spectrum microscope and blew it up to where they made these big gnarly looking things that would scare you to death. And they did it. As I remember, the result of that was that most of the stuff, like germs and bacteria, would actually live on a mouthpiece or some other hard surface for up to a couple of days. So
wow,
that's a long time. I mean, if you got kids sharing mouthpieces, they do make the the mist, Mighty Mist and Santa spray stuff, and supposedly
yes.
it does have an alcohol content. But I don't know if just spraying it inside of a mouthpiece is actually, I'm not sure what the effectiveness would be if you, ideally you'd take soap and water and a mouthpiece brush and you'd go to town on a mouthpiece after every kid used it. But obviously, in the situation where kids are coming and going, that's probably not going to happen. So I don't know. Everybody got,
go ahead. No,
if everybody had their own mouthpiece, I think that would at least, move the germs back 6 inches away from your face. I mean, I think that would be a better, that would be the best. And, mouthpieces don't cost, a huge amount of money. So I think if you could at least do that, you'd be helping the cause.
Well, even like you just mentioned, having the kids wash their mouthpieces out with soap and water after a rehearsal. I mean, that's probably something that most kids don't do, even if they own their own.
Yeah. If you had the wherewithal to have a sink and a few supplies there, and the kids had the time to do that, that would be a great strategy.
That's good. So let's change topic here. Hopefully nobody gets sick and that all gets worked out. So we're coming into contest season. People are getting their bands ready, and is there any precautions that people should have their students look at, make sure they check and all that stuff before they get going into those major performances?
Well, even though it seems like a huge coincidence that everybody's horn breaks right before a band concert or a trip or a contest or whatever, it really, all these problems are probably there way before the actual event comes around. So, I think what happens, my theory is that, kids kind of put up with, and directors kind of put up with whatever little, nagging problems are going on with their horn. And then when it gets down to crunch time and, what comes out of the horn is more important than it is other days of the month, that's when everybody goes, oh my God, my clarinet won't play a high B flat. So I think ideally the best strategy would be like a couple of weeks before something like that, talk to people, talk to the students and say, whether it's a school horn or a kid horn, and say, how's your horn playing? Are everything working? You could talk to the brass players. Are your valves all going? Your slides are all moving? Response is good. And then, if you did that a couple of weeks before the actual whatever event was, I think you could at least have time to get it to your local shop and have a few things done. There's always, the kid that drops his trumpet getting off the bus or whatever. That kind of stuff happens, and I don't know what to do about that. But preventative maintenance goes a long way.
So you think kids are afraid to tell their director that my valve slide is stuck or this note isn't speaking because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble?
I don't know. What do you say? I don't know why kids do that, but or they don't care, or it's not important because but all of a sudden the day before the concert you go, oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this because my horn's not working. So yeah, if you can kind of create an awareness that maybe you should solve some of these problems. Unless you have a really great relationship with your repair guy, calling him at 10 o'clock the night before your bus leaves is not a great way to handle problems.
You don't like those late night calls, do you?
Oh, it depends who it is, but yeah, I've gotten plenty of them over the last 40 years, but yeah, it's a fact of life. And if you're going to be in the business, you kind of have to, especially the customers that you enjoy, making happy, like you were back in Olathe 40 years ago. Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's certain people that you're willing to bend over backwards for, and others that you're not as thrilled about. But it's part of the deal.
Michael, great to have you with us. I sure appreciate you joining the podcast. And will you come on again?
Oh, sure. I'm honored to be part of this illustrious project. It's a great idea. It sounds like it's something you really are going to do well with.
Well, I'm having a lot of fun with it and getting to connect with wonderful people and friends like you. And give Sue my best, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Mike Rankin, Olathe Band Instrument Company, the Fix-It guy, man. This guy was amazing. A little story about Mike that I heard. I had the pleasure and honor of conducting the Kansas All-State Band, and the gentleman who was the All-State Band host, Bob Davis from Olathe Northwest High School, incredible director, incredible band program, mentioned that it was contest day, and one of his students dropped a horn, cracked it, and he called Mike, and Mike's wife Sue came over and got the horn. Well, he fixed it within like an hour. He had it back in his hand. So that's the kind of guy Mike is. He's great people.
Vandercook College Music is proud to support Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. Vandercook is the only college in the nation solely devoted to the practical education of the school music teacher. If you have a student who wants to teach music, or if you or someone you know is looking for a great, practical Master of Music education program, then look no further than Vandercook College of Music in Chicago, Illinois. Vandercook also has the largest array of on-campus and online classes in their Mecca continuing education program. To learn more about Vandercook, visit vandercook.edu.
Well, we're going to do a check-in here with Dr. Tim. I think I got Dr. Tim on the phone here. Dr. Tim, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, Bobo. Charlie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I guess I'm doing great. The world has changed since the last time we talked.
A little upside down, for sure.
A little upside down, and I'm sure that many of the people that are listening to the podcast today are teachers incredibly impacted by this whole coronavirus thing. And they'll be teaching classes from home and trying to connect with their kids and trying to figure out life in the year 2020. So what do you think of all this? What do you make of all this stuff?
Well, I don't tend to react. I'm like you. I tend to go, okay, if this is the situation, let's start getting plan B ready to go. And the sky's probably not falling, and what are we going to do to take advantage of what is there?
I think that's right. Yeah, and I think one of the things that teachers have to remember, and everybody has to remember, when you're trying something new, is don't try to get it perfect at first, because it's not going to be perfect. I mean, I'm just starting this podcast. It's far from perfect, but you got to do something and you got to get it going. And as you keep doing it, as they keep doing online instruction, they'll find ways to refine it and get it better and make it better and get more contact. Don't you think?
Well, I think that's true with anything. It's like people go, well, I'm not going to make any decisions yet. Well, that is a decision. It's a decision not to make a decision. So I'm like you. Let's start something. If we fumble it or stub our toes, well, let's fix that and just keep going.
Yeah.
Sitting around.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Yeah, when I was reading some Facebook posts and some online posts, and people going like, we had a big concert coming up, or we had another big rehearsal coming up, or we're going to a festival, and now all that's canceled. And immediately I flash back to when you were doing one of your leadership sessions one time, and you asked the students in the room, raise your hands as high as you can. And of course, they all raise their hands, and then you say, now raise them higher, and then they all raise them higher. And it's like, wait a minute, I asked you to raise your hands as high as they could the first time, and now you raised them higher. So you really give me as much as you could give me. And I think a lot of that is the same as, you know, kids in rehearsal. Man, I wish I could have had one more band concert. Well, you did have your one more band concert, you know, and speaking to people that give them their all the time, always giving your best effort, you know?
Mm-hmm. We're none of us are living up to our potential, if you want to be honest about it. We could always make things better, always. It was, a few years ago, I was doing one of the Bands of America things where I was bringing the bands on the field, and it had been horrible weather in this area of the country. And one director was just, this isn't right. Do you know how many rehearsals I lost? And it rained on us. And instead of keeping my mouth shut, I said, it only rained on you? It rained on everybody. You want some kind of exemption. But I mean, that's the human creature, right?
I know it.
It's survival of ourselves, right? So yeah.
It's crazy.
What do you think?
It's a crazy.
What do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be? I'll interview you.
Well, I honestly think that that society owes a lot to professional sports. I mean, I think had they not come out as strongly as they did with the NBA and then the NCAA and all of that, I don't think society would have taken it as seriously as we probably need to in order to just kind of get through this wrinkle. And so my thought is you know, we owe them a lot because, you know, professional sports is one of those things that it transcends political parties. You know, you don't ask somebody if they're a New England Patriots fan. Are you also a Republican? You know, you don't ask that. You just talk about sports, and so that this transcended the whole political argument of what's going on. I mean, this is really just something that we have to play the odds, and the odds are that if we keep people apart and we keep away from kids and we keep people from interacting, the chance of this thing spreading is going to be less. So I think we're probably looking at 60 days, and then we'll be on the other side of the curve, and it'll start going down, and probably by, you know, Memorial Day, life may get back to normal. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Well, I mean, let's flip it around. If you were one of those directors, what would you do? Because there's not a more creative mind in the world than yours. What would you do?
I mean, a director that's having to teach kids?
Yeah, if you were a high school band director right now.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
the first thing I'd do, I'd be in communication with all those kids. I mean, I would just be, I would be reaching out to them, and I would be asking them, how can we make this experience good for them? And it may not be the same for every kid. I don't think I would try at this point. I want to get as much buy-in from students as I can with the process. Because it's going to be so totally different. I'm not going to, you know, some kids are going to want to play their instruments and play their parts and email them in or record them and send them in. Some kids are going to maybe be exposed to listening to music. Some kids may be exposed to starting to compose music. Some kids might be exposed to being able to you know, critique music. I mean, who knows? It's going to be different for every kid for a while, and then, of course, every kid's going to be a little bit different in terms of, you know, what they have in their home. I mean, there's a lot of fortunate people that have, you know, laptops and iPads and all that stuff. But, you know, there's a large population of the kids that maybe don't have all that stuff either. I mean, they may be lucky if in the whole home there's one iPad there. For two or three kids and a mom and dad, you know. So I mean, if there's an assumption that technology is everywhere, but you know, I think, you know, we're talking about more affluent schools, and this is impacting all schools. I mean, this is impacting kids that don't have it. So there's going to be a whole challenge there too, to reach out to those kids and not let them fall too far behind. So I think, you know, the important thing right now is going to be finding out from the kids what they want to do, and maybe finding out what resources they have at their disposal, you know?
Well, the point is, and obviously talking to you, it's obvious from your point too, you can't just stop. You have to do something with the time, because you're not going to be able to get that time back.
So
Right.
let's refocus the target, and then go for that target. So yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting how this plays out.
Yeah,
So,
we're back to Darwin. The strong shall survive.
yeah.
Because they'll be creative about what they do at this time.
Yep.
So, and you're right about the sports thing too. That was a loud statement.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it was a really
Because
loud one.
population-wise, they're sort of Switzerland.
Yeah.
Like that. So what are you going to do with your time? You cancel.
I'm working on my podcast. There you go. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to talk to people like you, and I want to hear from some directors. I want to talk to directors. I want to talk to superintendents, to parents. I want to get more information that we can share with the whole band director community, and figure out, maybe set up some support group to help people get through this. That's what I want to do.
Well,
that's my small part.
Go ahead. You started to say my small part?
Yep. No, you're still here. Say what?
I said you started to say in my small part, and then.
That's what I want to do. That'll be my small part to help society get through this.
Yeah, in the moments of chaos is when the human is most creative.
Yeah.
Because nobody would even be thinking about these other options if everything was status quo. So.
That's right.
It's out of that's where penicillin came from. That's where Post-it notes came from. That's where all the things, it was because we need this. We can't get along without it. What are we going to do? Blah, 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 blah. And people come up with great ideas. So
yeah. It's like the old nothing motivates like no alternative.
Well, isn't that the truth? Yeah. Yes, that's the truth.
Okay, Dr. Tim, I'm going to let you go.
Okay. Thanks for calling in, Bubba.
Hey, no, thank you. I'll check in with you. We'll keep this thing going.
Okay. Thanks to everybody, too.
Okay, be safe,
Charlie.
Yep.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
God bless you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.